to update some information, I've actually got a $22 million budget now, so. I also know it has been an extremely long week, so if anyone needs to get up, I'm not gonna be offended, and you know I was in bed last night by 10, and I feel like I was up till 3 last night. So, how do I move the slides? Is it this? So just to give you some understanding of the Minority Health and Health Disparities Institute, because we've got about a $550 million budget, but we are disease agnostic and we work across all the NIH institutes on promoting and leading on health disparities and minority health research programs. So one of the things that my program does is we are disease agnostic, so you know, you might see some funding opportunities coming out later this year that, you know, NCI might sign on to, or Heart, Lung, and Blood, or some of the other institutes, because, you know, for example, like, you know, one of the things I'm going to mention later on is we're working on a tribal health health initiative. You don't want to make it seem like it's solely focused on cancer. We want to lead and be the big tent and focus on health disparities and health equity issues. I don't really focus on drugs, but if you come to me with a therapeutic or some kind of drug development, I am very collegial with all my colleagues. I do not mind working with them. In fact, I love working with them on getting, say, like cancer drugs or heart, lung, and blood devices out into health disparities populations. It's just we don't really fund drugs and therapeutics, but happy to introduce you to my other disease-specific colleagues. We mostly fund digital health services, such as delivering care and expanding research, such as like clinical trials, to health disparities and people living with health disparities populations, and I'll go into who those populations are that are defined by the NIH in a couple of slides. But for the most part, we focus on devices, services, and digital health that help close health equity gaps and causes, because a lot of health equity is caused because of a lack of cultural competency, lack of healthcare access, lack of knowledge. And, you know, for example, like I'm a New Yorker who grew up in the suburbs of Connecticut. What might work in that area might not work in Nebraska. What might work in a heavily Caucasian population, such as a device, an approach, a clinical trial approach, might not work in the Mississippi Delta. So we develop and test interventions to reduce health disparities. We work on advancing scientific understanding of the cause of health disparities, especially the intersectionality between race and ethnicity and socioeconomic status. And for the most part, we create scientific methods and metrics that are used across the NIH for promoting health disparities research and research for minority health populations. Now, I mentioned, you know, when people come to us for products, one of the things I try to say to them is, well, what are you trying to do and achieve health equity? Are you trying to create physical access, such as, you know, helping people actually get access to care if there's a transportation issue, or if they have people, or if there are people with disabilities? Is it a knowledge thing? Is it such as health literacy? Is it an infrastructure barrier, such as is there just not a healthcare clinic there, or is there a social determinant of health aspect, such as lack of transportation or a food insecurity area with lack of grocery stores that provide healthy food that's causing disease in that population? Is it economic, such as payment, price transparency? Do they have healthcare coverage? And most of all, is it cultural? And that kind of goes back to, you know, if I can give an example, working with tribal health populations, a lot of the concepts and ideas that come to us, you know, you really do need to do the due diligence on learning how people actually perceive your idea and your concept and how they're actually going to use it, because those are your customers and that's the market that you're going to want to capture. And that's one thing I want to add is that, you know, the underserved and health disparities populations, you have to think of it, yes, they're people that definitely need healthcare and expansion of NIH healthcare research, but they're also potential customers, and those are markets that you want to pursue because they're people that need services and they're not getting them, and they're willing to, you know, there's a need there for a customer base for them to buy your products. Now, as I mentioned, NIH has several health disparities recognized populations that includes Hispanics and Latinos, rural areas, American Indians and Alaska Natives, sexual and gender minorities, which are LGBTQ, Socially economic individuals such as people residing below the poverty line that are on Medicaid, African Americans and Blacks, Native Americans and Pacific Islanders, Asians, and my institute director, who is actually teleworking about 8 blocks from here from his house, announced in September people experiencing disabilities. So people with special needs, which they can either be born with or develop through time. And I think this is an extremely exciting area, especially for SBIR, because a lot of physical therapists, OTs, speech pathologists, they are extremely resilient and creative in developing technologies and adaptive therapies for serving their patients and people with disabilities. The benefit, the economic barriers and the access barriers, there's a huge disparity throughout the country, especially since most of them are on Medicaid or have different resource availability to them. Just some examples of what we fund here at NIMHD's SBIR, for LGBTQ, we'll fund like a trans woman connected app for sexual promotion, for tribal evaluation of patient navigation services, which is extremely important because not everything is run by IHS for Indian healthcare, for tribal healthcare populations, for Latinos, improving health literacy for an intergenerational approach, for African Americans, a rapid point of care test for renal risk analysis. Now, one of the things, so I think Matt talked a little bit about this during his presentation, providing an overview on the seed process, but the scientific review process, when you submit an application, this is gonna be your only time to talk to the reviewers. So the writing, and I'm not the best writer, I'm a draft writer. So usually, I'm so jealous of my friends that are lawyers and postdoctoral people that like just submit grants and they could just sit down the computer and just do it. Usually to write a paragraph, I have to, it takes a while. But one of the things that I encourage is be very upfront when you write your application and your abstract. Because a couple times a year, like I will try, or I'll do grant reviews, and by the time you get to like grant 5 or application 5 or 6, you're tired. So be upfront, and particularly with the equation on how to frame an abstract. Now, this is algebraic, and my father, who knows I'm terrible at math, especially algebra, thought that this was actually kind of funny. But try to frame, within the first 4 sentences, what health disparity population you're focused on. What's the health inequity problem? Is it access? Is it economic? Is it cultural? What's your intervention and difference from competitors? And how's that going to help equal health equity? And one of the things that I think is extremely important, because when you go for this, like the scientific review people, and I'm gonna lean to my colleague Jane over there from Heart, Lung, and Blood, who used to be a scientific review officer, to correct me if I'm wrong, but they're looking at areas such as innovation, environment, approach, skill set of the PIs and the team, and what's the other one? Did I count 4? Environment, approach. I'm trying to make this interactive, as you can tell. Teams, yes, okay. So, one of the things is it's important to be like right up there in front, and when writing your application, then weave into why that there is a health disparity population within the subsequent content and how your intervention can help create health equity. So for an example, Latinos experience high hypertension, educational and delivery of cultural competent and affordable preventive care through mobile healthcare units equals health equity. I know that's a word salad, but it at least sets up like an outline for you to create your first 4 sentences. Such as Company X will utilize a health disparities populations, community, and societal influences for use of machine learning dietary tools for creating guidance for diabetes control, therefore increasing equitable health access to control diabetes in a culturally competent method at an individual level. Yes, that is an extremely wordy sentence, but it covers all the bases, and that might be the most purple prose I've written in a while. But I hope you at least get the point. Be upfront when you're writing your application as far as first 4 sentences. talk about what your health disparities population is, because that's going to be important for application responsiveness, but also talk about why you're better than everyone else and what you can do and who your market is, because it's all about how you're going to serve these populations that have enormous healthcare barriers, one or more healthcare barriers, and how you're going to help achieve health equity. Now, one of the things we have, and we're going to do this for resubmissions at first, and this is our second year of the program, and eventually we're going to open this up to new applicants in the spring, is we have a HD pre-application program. It's going to be opening up in late January. You can email me for more information, but the program is rooted in helping people get better scores. Because it is my belief as a healthcare administrator by training that the more solid business plan you have, in which you submit an application, in which you have a strategic plan, but also tactical objectives to launch your phase 1 or phase 2, you're not going to be playing catch up, and you're going to be able to use your grant money immediately and hit the ground running, so that if you're a phase 1, you can get to phase 2 very quickly in a sound way, and if you're a phase 2, you can go for VC money or a phase 2B or get other outside funding. Just funding opportunities in 2024. We've got a bunch that are coming out, but Innovations for Healthy Living, which focuses on digital health services, decentralized clinical trials, and digital therapeutics. Those are just some of the areas, which a number of other health NIH ICs have also signed on to, including like NIH LBI and NCATS. That's going to be released in late winter, and that'll be open twice this year. We're also working on a tribal health opportunity to help provide funding that's been approved by our council to provide funding both for tribal health issues, but also funding directly to tribal-owned businesses for their own SBIRs to help solve problems at their community. Our council has also approved a telehealth concept that we're going to be working on, which is going to be a notice of special interest. And we have some other things in the hopper coming out in 2024 I can't talk about. So that is my talk. Everyone's taking pictures and nobody got up or fell asleep, so I think I did okay, and I hope I'm at time. So I now open it up to questions, and thank you very much, and thanks for coming out to San Francisco this week. Oh yeah, you. Oh yeah, so yes. What's that? Oh, she asked, can you provide some examples of services that we fund? So for example, on the social determinants of health level, providing mental health care or mental health services to people that are experiencing mental health disparities or service accesses. Some of the other areas that I'm really interested in, and this reflects what the NIH director just talked about in her New York Times interview, helping promote and facilitate greater expansion of diverse populations in clinical trials, whether that's providing services for like research nurses or actually like getting biospecimens quicker to those sites or doing engagement and enrollment activities. That's one example. It could also be, doing community healthcare worker work and going out there and promoting health promotions within health disparity populations. So those are some of the services we provide. The service, we love services, and it really just needs to be able to, if I could do another equation, I love services where if looking at the workflow, it's A, B, C, D. A is the beginning, D is the end, and they cut out the B and the C, and they make the process more efficient and provide better health access and a more efficient system. So those are the types of services we find. But I can talk to you more about that on the side. Yes, how are you?
Very good, thank you. So my question is for the pre-application program on February. So do you think that, for example, how long will be, what is the length? Because I am in the process, I expect to get the deadline for April 5. So
okay.
do you think that I could get it
We can talk more about that. Like, it's going to be open initially for resubmissions. New applicants are going to be open up later, and essentially I have a contractor that we have hired through that actually works with Heart, Lung, and Blood, and they put you through a cohort in coaching and mentoring. And they do a really good job of saying, okay, well, you've got this environment, does your approach fit within your environment? So, but we can talk more about that, but initially for that April 5th deadline, it's gonna be for resubmissions, and then we're gonna open it up to new applicants with the next cohort, which is gonna be probably more for the September 5th application debt. No worries. Hi, how are you? Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for the talk. I guess a question on your process. So, do you allow like the omnibus?
Yeah. So, okay. So, this is actually a really good question. So, we do participate in the omnibus. We also, and this is what we're trying to do, both for creating health markets, but also, you know, when you do an RFA or a NOFO, and I'm probably messing up on the language here. When you do a funding opportunity with a set-aside funds from the other institutes, it goes to a special emphasis panel. So, for example, my Healthy Innovations funding opportunity, that's going to be going to a panel that strictly is health disparities experts. Because I like to call the omnibus the grab bag, because you might have a health disparities population and say you're focusing on like cancer prevention, but then you get thrown into like the cancer study section, you're going up against, you know, some really well mature, good companies. So we do participate in the omnibus, but we're also in FY24, you know, please watch to see what our institute's going to be doing, because we hope to be coming up with more funding opportunities that will go to a special emphasis panel where you're going to have experts there that focus on health disparities. Yes, sir. How are you?
Thank you for what you're doing, first of all. Second,
thank you.
if you were to do a map of where you're providing support, where would those states be? Is it on the East Coast where you're located? West Coast?
Oh, that's a great question. And okay, so one of the things that that I have been trying to do over the last year is, and this is not a knock against Boston or San Francisco or Silicon Valley, but there is a lot of focus on healthcare entrepreneurship in those two areas. So we are trying to go into other markets. Now, I do not decide funding. The man who's teleworking 6 blocks away from here does. He signs off, he cuts the checks. I can make funding recommendations through my admiral, but we're trying to really spread throughout the country into areas like Chicago. Chicago's got awesome stuff going on. I've gotten some great applicants from Los Angeles, and you know, someone like Dave Whelan from LA Bioscience has given me a ton of really good applicants as well. I would like people from Florida, Texas. Like, this is a national grant program, and health disparities is a national issue, but it's also a community and a local issue. As I said, what might work in New York City might not work in Nebraska, so we're trying to fund companies based on the best science that help focus on the intersectionality between race and ethnicity and socioeconomic status throughout the country. So we're just not focused on Boston or San Francisco, but we want to go into other markets because it shows the diversity of problems that we're in research that we're trying to propel.
The regional Northwest Pleasant for case election process, national Hispanic group.
Yes. Oh, I'd love to talk to you afterwards. I would absolutely love to talk to you afterwards. Any other questions? I don't even know if I'm at time. Yes, sir. How are you?
What is your decision-making process?
The decision-making process is just like all the other NIH institutes. You apply. Hopefully, you get discussed. And Jane can correct me, only about 50% of applications get discussed. Hopefully, you're going to get a score, and then my admiral and my IC director sit and they're like, okay, well, here's the score. What are the institute's strategic priorities? And then that's how they make funding decisions. So if you don't get funded by us, you can't yell at me because I don't cut the checks. But that's how it is. And a lot of it is based on the best science and the Institute priorities. And, you know, my IC director actually just released a JAMA article on health disparities research, which is really good and provides clear understanding of what the emphasis is coming out from the Institute. But I'm here to help with applications, to review aims and abstracts, and help prepare you all for success. So please contact me at any time. I'm pretty accessible, except this week, where, but I'm very accessible. I have a link for office hours, and please bring your ideas to me. And like I said, even if you don't fit within our cohort or within our institute, you know, one of the things I love, especially growing up in academic medicine, is we're all very collegial. We don't have sharp elbows, and we're all trying to we're all very collegial, and we all just want to see you all successful in going out there and furthering the NIH's mission and creating economic development for the country. So thank you very much.